Okay, so if you've ever spent any time scrolling through YouTube, you've definitely seen these. These really simple, colorful cartoons telling stories about birds, animals, and fairies. And they're not just for kids. They're actually modern fables, and they rack up millions upon millions of views by delivering these really powerful, straightforward moral lessons. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this massive genre and really figure out what makes them tick. Right. It all seems so simple on the surface, but is it? Is there some kind of repeatable blueprint, a narrative formula that creators are using over and over to craft these super compelling little stories? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Let's see if we can uncover that blueprint together. So here's the game plan. We're going to start by introducing our case study, a really popular cartoon series. Then we're going to deconstruct two of its stories. One is about blueberries, the other is about a magic coin. From there, we'll piece together the underlying formula that connects both of them, and finally, we'll look at the ultimate moral they're all designed to teach. Okay, so the source material we're digging into is a Hindi language animated series. The stories basically revolve around this central cast of characters. You've got a very kind-hearted sparrow named Ranu, who's always looking out for her community, and then you have a pair of perpetually greedy crows, Kalu and Gauri. What's so fascinating here is that the core conflict is already set up before a story even begins, all thanks to these classic archetypes. On one side, you have the provider, Ranu. Her instinct is to share whatever she has. But on the other side, you've got the hoarders, Kalu and Gauri, and their instinct is just to take and to hide. This fundamental opposition, well, that's what drives all the drama. All right, let's jump into our first story and see how this actually plays out. The setup is really simple, but also pretty stark. It's a harsh winter, the jungle is totally bare, and all the birds are really struggling to find any food. I mean, survival is literally on the line. So in this really desperate situation, Ranu and her kids make this miraculous discovery, a blueberry tree, hidden away, completely untouched. And what's her very first thought? It's not to keep it a secret for her family. Nope. Her first instinct is to immediately share this life-saving resource with everyone else in the community. And right here, this is the crucial turning point. Ranu, acting like the true provider she is, tells the greedy crows, Kalu and Gauri, about her amazing find. But instead of being grateful, the hoarders see an opportunity. They don't just take a few berries for themselves, they decide they're going to take all of them. This quote, it just reveals their mindset perfectly, doesn't it? It's not just an impulse, this is a premeditated plan to create comfort for themselves, and it's at the direct expense of their entire community. That calculated selfishness is a really key element of their greed. Of course, an act of greed this big has consequences. Ranu and the others find the tree completely empty, and the crows lie to cover their tracks. But the real punishment here isn't some big direct confrontation, it's social. When Ranu finds a new food source later, bananas, she shares it with everyone. Except the crows. They've broken a community's trust, and their own selfishness ultimately leads them right back to where they started, hungry. So the lesson here is pretty simple, and it's really grounded in reality. The punishment for hoarding is that you get cut off from future resources. Greed leads you directly back to the very scarcity you were trying so hard to escape. A social punishment, that works for a fight over some berries. But what happens when the transgression is way more severe? What happens when greed moves from just food to fortune? Okay, let's look at our second story. Now, the conflict here isn't about natural resources anymore. It's about a financial one. The whole problem has been escalated. So in this fable, Ranu is in debt to Kalu the crow. It's a very real-world problem, right? But the solution that appears is anything but. Her daughter, Gudia, happens to run into a magical fairy who provides a totally supernatural fix. A single gold coin, just enough to solve their problem. And just like what happened with the blueberries, the crow's greed immediately takes over. Seeing that one gold coin isn't enough, of course they want more. But notice the escalation here. They don't just steal something this time. They commit a really serious crime. They actually kidnap a child, Gudia, and try to extort a magical being for more wealth. So, because the crime has escalated from hoarding to kidnapping, the consequence has to be more severe too. A simple social shunning just won't cut it anymore. When you introduce magic into the solution, you kind of have to introduce it into the punishment as well. And this is what we get. Magical justice. It's direct, it's swift, and it's perfectly proportional. The fairy literally asks them, "How many coins do you want?" They say 10.
So she summons magical shoes that deliver 10 blows each. The punishment perfectly mirrors their greed. It's brilliant.
So we've looked at two different stories, one about food scarcity and another about magical debt. And yeah, on the surface, they seem pretty different. But underneath it all, they are built on the exact same narrative chassis.
And here it is, the 5-step blueprint. First, a problem comes up, creating a really clear need. Then, a solution appears, offering some relief. But then comes the big pivot. A selfish choice is made. And this choice inevitably leads to a fitting consequence being delivered. And then finally, just to make absolutely sure the message lands, the moral is stated outright, leaving zero room for ambiguity.
When you lay them out side by side like this, you can see just how perfectly both stories map onto this formula. The problem changes from hunger to debt. The solution goes from a fruit tree to a fairy. The selfish choice escalates from hoarding to kidnapping, and the consequence, well, it goes from social exclusion to a magical punishment. It's the exact same structure, just with different variables plugged in. So what's the ultimate point of this formula? What is the one central message that these fables are so effectively designed to communicate over and over again?
It's this. At the end of a first story, the narrator states it explicitly in Hindi. Lalach buri bala hai. Greed is a curse. Every single element of the formula, from the character archetypes all the way to the escalating punishments, is built specifically to reinforce this one powerful idea.
And that's really the genius of it, isn't it? The power of these stories isn't in their nuance or their complexity, it's in their absolute clarity. There are no gray areas. A problem is presented, a morally wrong choice is made, and a direct consequence follows. It's this clean, efficient engine for delivering a moral lesson, and it's perfectly suited for online platforms, where visual storytelling that can cut through language barriers is absolutely key.
All this leaves us with one final and, I think, pretty important question. In a world that we know is filled with complexity and all sorts of moral ambiguity, what is the value, and maybe the enduring appeal, of a story that boils everything down to such a simple, black and white lesson?